Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, good morning, and welcome to our virtual showcase. Thank you for taking the time to join myself and our sponsors Spanning on today's discussion, which is focused on it's not a matter of if, when, it's the good, the bad, the ugly, and the old, the new, the mighty cyber threats to look out for in 2024. My name is Nick Pryke. I'll be your host for the next 90 minutes and very much looking forward to filling that purpose. My role here is to get us going, keep the conversation balanced, and give you all the open space to explore challenges, share insights, and connect those all-important experiences. To that extent, a couple of quick bits of housekeeping before we jump in. This is a closed-door session. Nothing we discuss here will be released into the public domain. So please do feel free to share your experiences, get comfortable, and open up. Today's showcase will contain a keynote and a panel discussion, both of which will have an open audience Q&A session. So again, do get involved. We actively encourage it. To do so, we have Adam, our technical operator, on hand to field any questions. So get ready to ask away. Feel free to send him DMs. You also have a raise hand in the bottom navigation bar right down there, as well as a Q&A as well. So feel free to use any of those and we will bring you up into the conversation and on our virtual screen or stage to ask questions when the time is right. In the same vein, please do feel free to engage with one another. The showcase is all about getting the most out of your 90 minutes here. And to make sure that continues past today, our team at Synergy will be following up with you after the showcase to get feedback on your experience and any connections you would like to make. We will also provide you with the recording and any information from today's discussion you would like. So enough from me and more about what we're here for today. To say the adoption of AI among businesses is a growing trend is, of course, a massive understatement. For the media hype to its very real use cases, and let's get ChatGPT out of the way quickly. Its high propensity for task automation, cost reduction, unlocking of new opportunities, and exceptional process execution improvement potential is absolutely undeniable. Stat here, global AI adoption is set to expand at compound average growth rate of 38.1% between 2022 and 2030. The question is, how does all of this impact the data security of your companies? Can a robust backup and recovery solution effectively maintain business continuity? And perhaps most importantly, can one do so while simultaneously combating the cybersecurity threats posed by AI? This showcase certainly aims to find out discussing the implications of and those all-important advancements in AI. We'll discuss whether AI is the biggest innovation or biggest threat, probably a balance of the two. We'll explore AI and the evolution of social engineering threats to companies today, and we will uncover the real AI threats facing your organization's data. Most importantly, we'll hear from you, those building a bridge into the future with AI at its very core. And to kick things off on that journey, I'd like to welcome our keynote speakers for today. A virtual round of applause for Adam Marget, Product Marketing, Unified Backup at Kaseya, and Kelly Croning, Product Marketing Cloud Backup at Spanning. Kelly, Adam, good morning to you both. We'll give you a quick second to join us here. How are you doing? Adam, can you hear me yet? Kelly, are you there? Here we go. Adam, hello.
Hey, Nick, hello, how are you?
Very well, thank you, sir. Yourself, how are you doing?
Very well, thank you.
Brilliant. And Kelly, good morning to you as well. Thank you very much for joining us for today's keynote. To our audience, I'll be back in around 50 minutes, give or take. So don't forget to start thinking, raising your virtual hands and getting those questions in for Adam and Kelly in around about 20 minutes or so. But for now, Adam and Kelly, it's over to yourselves.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Nick. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. And thanks for that great introduction, Nick. I'm Kelly Croning. I work for Kaseya, or Spanning, as you can see on my screen here. I'm a product marketing manager for the Spanning backup solution at Kaseya. A little bit about me. I've been with the company since 2019, but I have a background in software for years, prior working at Kaseya. While my time at Kaseya, I was in a sales role, in account management, switched to a little bit more technical role as a solutions specialist, and then most recently switched to product marketing, which I think I finally found my home within the company. Adam, do you want to tell us a little bit about you?
Yeah, absolutely. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever it is that you're joining us from. As Kelly said, my name is Adam Marquette. I'm also with Kaseya, and if Kelly is kind of our sassy PMM working with all things cloud, I come to you more from the infrastructure side. I came to Kaseya with the acquisition of Unitrends. I've been a member of Unitrends and Kaseya combined for the last 7 years. I've held a few different roles within the company, but one of the things that Kelly mentioned I love about product marketing is that we sit in between the intersection of the engineers and the teams that are driving our innovation, delivering solutions into the market. And on the other side of that is yourselves, the consumers, the practitioners that are utilizing those tools in your day-to-day. So I've loved being in between that to understand what are the needs of the market, where do you see your environments going, what challenges are you facing, and how can we convey that and deliver tools and solutions to make you more resilient, ensure that you've got confidence in your recoveries, and ultimately are staving off cyber threats to keep your organizations running right along.
That is a great summary, Adam, of what we do on the product marketing side with Kaseya. Quickly, I did have a question for the audience, and I would love your participation. Would anyone like to take a guess as far as just how big cybercrime has been in 2023? As you can see, the GDP of the United States is at 26.9 trillion, China at 17.8. I would love to hear a guess as far, or at least see a guess in the chat. 7 trillion I see from Mark. Any
Mark's
other takers?
right on the ball.
Yeah, he's pretty close. Adam, do you think we should share? Oh, 5 trillion from Nathaniel.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. Should we share our? Oh,
You
okay.
guys are right in the ballpark,
right in the ballpark.
Dinesh nailed it. It's staggering.
$8 trillion in cybercrime in 2023 alone, which is twice the size of the next two largest GDPs in the world, combining both Germany at 4.4 trillion and Japan at 4.2 trillion. And scarily, it's predicted to reach up to 10.5 trillion by 2025. I don't know about you, Adam, but that is a scary number for me to comprehend. And there's a lot of opportunity for threat actors. In 2021, we reached a tipping point. Cyber attacks hit more SMBs than enterprise and large-scale companies. So the question is not if, but when. This year, 73% of organizations worldwide have been affected by a ransomware attack, which is a 17% increase in the last 3 years and a 32% increase over the last 5. You might be wondering who might be targets of these attacks. Well, the truth is no one is really safe. No industry is safe. I apologize. Manufacturing was hit the hardest out of any sector within the industry in Q1 of 2023 alone, which is just under 17%. And then some of the least targeted groups were consumer and retail, as well as financial services. We also conducted a survey on preparedness for these types of attacks, and despite rising risks, 60% of respondents are less concerned with attacks against their cloud environments or SaaS environments, 40% against the public cloud infrastructure. Endpoint data is of the greatest concern from our respondents, and a shockingly 25% of respondents mistakenly believe that their cloud or SaaS provider is responsible for their data protection, which we will later discuss during this presentation. So Adam, how do these people get through? How do these attackers get through?
It's a good question, Kelly, and the title of our keynote, the new, the old, and the mighty, I think is a little bit of a play on words, if you will. And as far as old, everything new, or everything old rather, is new again. We see that phishing is what sparks the majority of cyber attacks. More than 80% of ransomware payloads are delivered via the phishing method. And as we know, and for a lot of IT practitioners, it's that end user, the human firewall, if you will, that a lot of times is the supported weakness or the weakest link in that cybersecurity defense chain. Where the new element of this comes in is the use of AI and other technologies to accelerate these attacks and to increase their authenticity. Researchers at IBM's X-Force used language models to produce phishing emails that were as credible or on par with some of the most sophisticated in the industry that they had studied and observed. And it took the time of work from attackers from about 48 hours to develop a really good email that's going to get past those spam filters. AI is able to spit out those templates in about 5 minutes. And what we're seeing, this one's been addressed and analyzed through some thought research, but we're seeing a lot of personalization and using tools to automate and increase the authenticity. The name of this victim was redacted in the article, but there was personalization right in the subject line. This is an announcement for you, the user. This was sent to you. This looks legitimate. A lot of these attacks, and where we should really be on high alert, particularly around this time of year, they're trying to catch users off guard or elicit an emotional response. Your card has been declined. Your shipment has been lost. Researchers at CyberReady estimate the phishing attacks increase at least by 400% this time of the year as we're getting into the holiday season. So in this attack, it's been well branded here. They've got the Zoom logo, the familiar button. We've all been working with Zoom now for a number of years in this new hybrid world. This all looks fairly familiar, and it's been personalized for the user. So they click through, and what they're brought to is what looks like a really good spoofed Microsoft page. To the trained eye, to IT practitioners, you might go right up to the URL here in the link and say immediately, this isn't legit. But for an unsuspecting user, their name, again, redacted in the article where I sourced this from, was already auto-populated. So they come in, they see the familiar splash screen from Microsoft, and they go in and they input their credentials. And now all of a sudden, the attackers have access. What's really scary here is that the user's credentials do not just give access to their email account, SharePoint, and OneDrive. But for the majority of users out there, as reported by Google, they're using the same password across all of their accounts and services. So now all of a sudden, I've got access to Adam's account on Microsoft. Can I get into his Adobe? I could probably get into maybe his Salesforce, his human resources, his retirement plan, extract out that critical information, move laterally to find what it is that you're looking for the maximum impact. And ultimately, we're seeing an increase in extortion lately in these attacks because simply locking down the data and demanding the ransom has not been sufficient. Users have backups. They've got immutable copies that are off-site. We caught up pretty quickly and upped our defenses collectively as an industry against ransomware. And when they found that, hey, people are getting out of this a little too often for our convenience, they started to exfiltrate that data so that if you were able to decrypt or recover, they were able to hit you with an extortion attack on the back end. And Kelly, what is it that cyber criminals are going after once they've penetrated network defenses?
Great question, Adam. Honestly, most of it is customer PII and employee PII. What they're after is financially motivated, whether that's ransom, extortion, or stolen credentials, like you had just mentioned. For approximately $1,000, criminals can obtain a full range of documents and account details, enabling them to commit identity theft. And these forged documents, such as driver's licenses, passports, and auto insurance cards, can also be ordered to match stolen data. What we have seen with these types of attacks too is, I know we've talked about this and we'll continue to talk about this threat of AI, but AI is just continually making it more efficient for these hackers. And you will see here a most recent example. I'm sure many of you have heard about the 23andMe hack that most recently happened, I believe, earlier in October, and they used credential stuffing, which is a common technique, which using passwords and usernames that are already public or have been collected from the dark web. And what they're doing is using this AI or bots to speed up that process of the credential stuffing to more quickly get access to that personal information. And 4 million users from 23andMe, to be exact. Gollum, the hacker, was after stolen PII of some of the wealthiest people living in the US and Western Europe, in hopes of getting that information. Immediately after the attack, 23andMe urged its users to change their passwords and enable MFA. But what I thought was a little interesting, you'll see on our last bullet point here, is 23andMe was not taking any of the blame. It was most definitely pointing the finger at its end users and letting them know that their passwords were not strong enough. They should enable MFA as a best practice, as many of you do today. And then as well, kind of put them in charge of what was happening with an opt-in feature that allows end users to see data of genetic matches across the platform of other users who have opted into that.
So it's a pretty bold move to blame a breach on your feature.
Yes, I agree with you, Adam. I'm at a little loss for words. But the question comes to us. It was, would you risk it? Would you risk putting your information out there? Most of our information is already out there, but what are we doing to protect ourselves moving forward? Adam, you had some insights you wanted to share as well.
The coin flip is very apropos, and what we've seen across the different environments when we look at findings from the State of Ransomware Attack Preparedness. This was research that was co-sponsored with IDG, and we found that ransomware recovery is taking multiple days. But what's scary at times is the lack of defenses. Data is a target regardless of where it's stored. We have the most robust defenses in preparation on-prem. We see the most successful and the highest volume of full recoveries on-prem. When we start dealing with endpoints, public cloud infrastructure, SaaS applications outside of maybe the firewall or our conventional defenses, it starts to get a little murkier and a little bit more difficult to defend. We've invested heavily in robust defenses, backup, and disaster recovery. But even Kelly mentioned there's a small cohort, about a quarter of users out there, that still believe that the cloud providers are responsible for protecting their data. And that's simply not true. They're focused on the availability of their application, not the integrity of the data or the service. And when it comes to getting into SaaS applications, while it may seem unlikely that someone wants to go after Microsoft, a lot of times these are sparked by stolen user credentials, but they may use malicious third-party apps. They may abuse APIs to get access to these accounts and to SaaS data. There are a number of ways to go after there. Phishing certainly the most prominent, but there are other means to get after these environments. And from what we've seen over the last year, organizations have not been ready or have not had the same resilience for that data in the cloud. I know that we work at Kaseya with a lot of folks that are looking to up-level that protection, whether it's for their SaaS applications, data that they've migrated into Microsoft 365, because as the data moves, 60% of all corporate data is now stored in the cloud. Attackers are shifting their focus, and in a lot of instances, we're simply still playing catch up to those approaches. Now, we've talked a little bit about AI, and we're seeing it being used in a number of ways. It's certainly not perfect. It has its hiccups. I came across an article around ChatGPT that it's actually getting less accurate when it comes to solving some equations in mathematics, and they're looking into, why that might be. But like we've talked about, it accelerates the production of phishing emails. It cleans up a lot of those common cues poor grammar, spelling mistakes that we would see from a lot of these attacks, but it's also being used in other creative ways, being able to write and compile code, using SEO, legitimate SEO ranking techniques to raise malicious content and malicious links higher up on search engines. They target or identify a vulnerable population. They insert malicious content. They use real SEO techniques to rank it higher on Google and Bing and others. And users that are seeking out that information are now finding themselves clicking into infected links. Now, you might be thinking, I'm smarter than this. I know that these AI generated images, they're not perfect. A lot of times there are artifacts on the periphery that we could identify. I trust my eyes. But how far can you trust them? Here's an example, and a lot of folks wouldn't take a story on social media seriously if they only saw one post. But the force multiplier effect here is significant. And in this case, it was an entire misinformation network and campaign that was built with bots. This occurred back in May earlier this year, and it was a fully AI generated image of an attack on the Pentagon. And it was tweeted out by a fake Bloomberg account. This is not a real Bloomberg feed, but now you can simply pay for that blue check mark. It looks legitimate. And all of folks across business, economics, markets, other accounts in these segments that were following or saw something from a supported Bloomberg account quickly picked this up, and it very fast went viral. Gold, treasury bonds, and other assets that people typically purchase during wartime or sort of doomsday scenarios spiked in the morning. There was a real economic impact. The Arlington Fire Department had to respond, and they eventually were able to suspend and shut down these accounts, and it was all developed by AI. Now you're thinking, I can trust my eyes. Can you trust your ears as well? And this is where maybe one of the more interesting use cases of AI. And the story is a little bit more lighthearted, but the implications are frankly terrifying. A journalist at the Wall Street Journal used AI to create an image of herself to see how far she could get with it in terms of performing certain routine tasks and other things that she was doing throughout her day. She conducted a full interview with the CEO of Snap with the AI avatar of herself. When she came on at the end and said, hey, you've been talking essentially to a robot, the CEO was blown away. He had no idea. Very credible. It wasn't a great fit to replicate her likeness and develop TikTok or social media content, but here's where it gets scary. The AI was able to successfully manipulate and reconstruct her voice to bypass voice banking biometrics. And the implication here is really scary because we're seeing an uptick in the way in which phishing attacks are going after our users. It's not just the traditional emails. It could be QR-based attacks. It could be a phishing attack in which they pair a voicemail with email. So I'll use our company as an example. Our CEO is Fred Vicola. He's somebody that's very out there in the media. He does a lot of interviews with the channel and with other publications. He does quarterly town halls with us. He's on stage at Kaseya Connect Global in Vegas every spring, at DattoCon now in the fall. So there's a very prominent public figure for our company. And imagine you've got a lower ranking employee in your finance department and they get a call. It's someone that sounds just like this CEO that they hear every quarter, every week that gets on. And he says, Adam, got an emergency request for you. I'm sending a purchase order to authorize for a partner that we're spinning up, but I'm about to get on a plane. Calling to give you the heads up. It's going to come from this person at this dollar amount. I need you to process it ASAP. Thank you. Text me with any questions, whatever it might be. They hang up. A few minutes later, that email comes in. The sender is correct. The dollar amount is correct. And they start to go through and process it. It may sound far-fetched, but it's incredibly effective. The use of phishing or pairing voicemails with email phishing attacks, researchers at IBM found increases the success rate by 300%. More than half of the time, these attacks are successful at getting a user to take that action. So they are incredibly crafty in the different ways in which they can try to manipulate our users and get them to perform an action that leaves our company, our organization at risk. So how do we defend our users and our organization? I came across some interesting research from Google, and I think a lot of folks may start at the end user. And I'll be curious when we get into our panel discussion, what other folks are seeing at their organizations. We've got some really, large scale companies and panelists that'll be coming on with us. So I'm excited to hear their insights. But even understanding our users and where their blind spots might be, what are their tendencies? The folks that are coming into the workforce today, as found by Google, are likely to use 2FA. They've been using it on social media. They've been used to scanning QR codes for menus throughout, the last few years. If things have changed a little bit, they're not great at rotating or changing their passwords. They're less likely to know what phishing means and how to stop it. And there's also this generation that has grown up on their phones. I'm in my mid-30s now, so I'm a little bit of an older millennial, but not the oldest millennial. So there's a little bit of this with folks in my age too, but I think especially when you look at the younger folks that are coming in now into the workforce and this culture or sensation of instant gratification, their phone buzzes, they're immediately there. They get an email, they get a request from someone they think is important, they want to please, they want to react to that very quickly. They may not have the same level of thought to pause and really inspect carefully. That's where education and training really comes into play. But there is a huge number of folks that have sort of this hard-coded behavior, the way that we've grown up, the way that society is now, I think lends itself to risky behavior when it comes to cybersecurity and phishing attacks. The older generation, they're more likely to update security software, use different passwords for other accounts, but they don't use password managers. So they have a sticky note hanging on their monitor with a bunch of passwords. Maybe it's in a file cabinet next to their desk. Physical security matters as well. We're back in the office. In a lot of cases, we may not always recognize the people that are coming in. There's been a lot of turnover over the last 2 years, and now there's return to office. So you need to be on particularly high alert, even when it comes to that physical security. Now, regardless of whether you subscribe to something like the NIST framework or the Essential 8 down in Australia, we spent a good bit of time working with our colleagues in APAC and EMEA, Australia Pacific, around the Essential 8 and the new regulations there. You must layer your defense. MFA is a start. There's no reason to not enable it. It's free for most applications and enterprise services today. Users are used to it, but it's not a silver bullet. Rampant Kitten is a hacker group that's backed by an Iranian militia, and they conducted a very targeted attack across their nation state. They had extracted and stolen the passwords and credentials of their targets. These were folks that were opposing the regime that they were looking to implement or to put into place. So they had opposition. They had identified the users and their names, but they had MFA on their devices. So how do we crack that? They used infected charging stations riddled in strategic locations throughout the areas where these journalists and other folks were located. And when the user plugged their phone into the charging station, malware was inserted onto the device, and it had a single purpose. It was to intercept the one-time passcodes in real time. So as they buzzed and they went to authenticate, they get the code that's sent to their phone. The hackers grabbed it, and they were able to log in. The user maybe tried to paste it from their keyboard, and it didn't work, so they just re-pushed that request. They don't think anything of it, but all of a sudden the damage was done, and it was too late, and they were able to get in. These threats come from multiple sources. And when we think about layering our defense, a lot of these frameworks, NIST, Essential 8, they use maturity levels. You don't have to do everything all at once. That first layer might be education and more administrative. Don't be clicking on things. Don't open files sent by email. That next layer is your antivirus, anti-malware software. Another layer might be remote browser isolation. There are steps that you can take to build a sort of force multiplier effect so that if an attack does bypass through one layer, it should be caught and stopped by a subsequent layer. Of course, it's an ever-going battle. It's a constant tug of war between the white hats and the black hats. There is no silver bullet when it comes to cybersecurity. Eventually, something slips through, something might get clicked, maybe something's accidentally deleted, but ultimately there is a data loss.
Yeah, there is. But are SaaS vendors responsible for your data loss? Let's use Microsoft 365 As an example, you're migrating to the cloud. Microsoft will store your data in SharePoint and in OneDrive, but Microsoft does not back up that data. Oftentimes in their SLA, it will explicitly say that they are not responsible for any form of data loss that results from end user accidental deletion or malicious insider activity, security issues such as, let's say, ransomware or malware entering the environment. And what it ultimately boils down to is availability versus backup and recovery. Microsoft is designed for ease of access for your data and availability of that data. However, it is not responsible for those data losses. We often conflate high availability, which means when you log in, the service is there. If a server fails, there's another server to take over in their stead. That availability has nothing to do with the accuracy or the integrity of the data within those systems. That is why you need a backup, and it's important to have a backup in place to easily restore from. Let's go a little bit. Yep. Next. So what about that recycle bin or your vault in Google? Most recycle bins only retain that deleted item for approximately 30 days. And most instances of data loss, people are unaware of 277 days after that data was deleted from your environment. So that point of recovery is going to be extremely difficult from the Microsoft side. And that is why in their SLA is they recommend having a third-party backup as well. And Adam, you had an example to share of an incident of data loss. Do you want to add some color there?
So I'm sorry, I had to come off mute there. Just toggling the controls. You're absolutely right. And even when Microsoft or Google are doing their job right, things can still go terribly wrong. And this is an example from a customer of ours. And it was actually before they were a customer of Spanning Backup. There was an event that was really a wake-up call. Westland Real Estate Group had an employee in their accounting department click on a malicious link. They were targeted by a breach. They clicked on the link, and all of a sudden files locally started to get encrypted. They're a Google shop, so they were using Google. They had the sync tools enabled. And when the changes are occurring locally on the device, the sync tool sees that and says, hey, I've got to grab those. Those are some new files. Let me upload those to the cloud. And what the sync ended up doing was replacing thousands of good files with thousands of files that were now encrypted with malware. They were completely unusable. The team didn't have granular or asynchronous backup and recovery to be able to restore. So it was a massive effort, weeks-long effort to manually replace thousands of files from their last known good state. There were certainly aspects of data loss there. Not everything could be created from scratch. And that was the wake-up call where their IT admin, Jesse, having gone through this, says, hey, I'm not worried about, maybe Google itself doing its job. The sync and share feature worked as intended. But in this case where we had a user do something wrong, whether it was that deletion like Kelly had talked about, or they click on something and now our files are infected, we need to protect our organization and our data from events like this ever occurring again. And that was really the catalyst that drove them to look at a third-party backup and recovery tool for the environment. And they settled on and they chose Spanning. Now, for a lot of these vendors and their native capabilities, recovery is limited. As Kelly mentioned, SaaS vendors are replicating for application availability, not backup and restore. A lot of these items are going to be lost long after the recycle bin expires. And Microsoft doesn't give you the tools to really recover at scale and investigate thoroughly. Can you drop what you're doing now to find out when the data loss has occurred? On average, IT workers are spending 250 hours a year just looking for lost data. For what isn't found, end users themselves are spending another 250 hours on average recreating what wasn't able to be recovered. So there's a massive time suck and duplication of efforts, taking IT away from more strategic initiatives and taking care of the business, moving things forward just to search for a user that has made a mistake or lost that data. A lot of these remediations are expensive. Can your business wait for a support ticket response from Microsoft? What sort of SLA do they put around that? And when it comes to what they may be able to offer, they might say, well, hey, you've had some corruption on that SharePoint, within one of the sites. We could lock the entire site and roll it back a week. Is that really going to be worth it just to restore a handful of files or small amounts of data? The cost or the damage there doesn't always outweigh, but there is still an impact to the business and its productivity. Now, I'm a big fan, and I look for the IBM cost of a data breach report every year. That and the Verizon's DBIR data breach investigations report are two of really the pillar documents that I look for every year. And IBM found that there are significant, impactful, quantifiable cost savings for organizations that have higher levels of incident response planning and preparation. This is everything. Backup and restore is one part of that, but knowing when to break glass, having drilled that, how to educate your users, how to get them reconnected if there's an impact that shuts down the local site is all critically important. Ultimately, that level of preparation and drilling will help your organization respond more quickly and minimize the impact and the proliferation of a data loss event. On average, organizations that showed high levels of IR planning and ultimately testing, making sure that everyone understands their roles and responsibilities, understanding how and where we can recover that data, reduced the average cost of a breach by 33%. IBM's cost this year was over $4.5 million per breach event, but there was some substantial savings with that thorough preparation. And Kelly, that's where spanning comes in, right?
Correct. Spanning is a third-party SaaS backup solution that was founded in 2010, which is now a Kaseya company. Spanning is the leader in SaaS data protection. It's proven and trusted by more than 11,000 organizations globally to provide a complete, automated, and priced right solution that meet rigorous requirements for listing in Microsoft App Source, Salesforce App Exchange, and the Google Workspace Marketplace. Spanning is an enterprise-grade solution for Microsoft 365, Google Workspace, and Salesforce, but oftentimes our smaller customers as well utilize the solution because it's so easy to use. It is a point-in-time restore. You have a granular option. So let's say you are infected with ransomware and those files are encrypted. You can go back and restore those files from before they were encrypted by that malware. SharePoint Online, as well as Teams backups, OneDrive, OneNote, as well as your Exchange are some of those features. We also have an option with dark web monitoring. So being a little bit more proactive with your approach to backup. It is a comprehensive protection for SaaS data loss. We validate and have confidence in the integrity and quality of your backups. You can meet your RTO and RPO targets and improve your business continuity using a solution like Spanning. Also, it improves your IT and end user productivity by offering end user restore. I know some of you IT managers out there are not a fan of requests for or unnecessary requests. So giving your end users the option to do their own restore on their own time is one less item on your to-do list. And do you have anything to add there, Adam?
No, I'm sorry. A tickle in my throat.
Okay. And I believe next, we're just going to talk about how secure spanning really is, Adam. Did you want to add some color to that?
It is. And regardless of whether you're choosing spanning or another from the litany of options there in the marketplace, there are some key things that you should be looking for. Certainly MFA is a checkbox item required for a lot of compliance, regulation, cyber insurance. If you're looking to mandate and maintain a cyber insurance policy, everything's got to have MFA on it these days, and that's really table stakes. OAuth 2.0 is an interesting one. And if you're looking into third-party protection for your cloud environments, consider looking for solutions that use OAuth. This is application level authorization to the tenant. So we do not need to create service accounts with passwords. That's another set of credentials that you need to manage, another set of credentials that could potentially be compromised. Who owns these? Who's responsible for them? It's a little bit tricky. We also offer encryption for all data in flight at rest with military grade 256-bit encryption, and you're in control of the keys. So you can recall access to the encryption keys at any time. For a lot of our customers in highly regulated industries, finance, healthcare, that was a very important aspect for them to be able to do. But when we look at kind of a layered defense, we want to ensure that we're using applications that don't impersonate users or administrators. That is a risk and another door into your environment. OAuth and MFA on the front lines there. Phishing defense and user awareness training is something that every organization should be doing regularly. We ongo it very rigorously here at Kaseya. We are constantly training. There's a large sales organization that we have that has a decent bit of turnover, and especially for new folks coming in, and even for folks that have been here for a little while, train them up on the new techniques. I got one the other day with a QR code in the email. It looked very credible from Microsoft Teams. They're always trying new things. And the idea of dark web monitoring and to spot those credentials helps to secure accounts at risk. You can identify where there are users that have been breached or compromised, I should say, on the tenant, and proactively secure those accounts with password rotation, or even larger volumes of users. Kelly talked about credential stuffing. Dark web monitoring tools may reveal not just password hits, but large lists of users. Attackers that have identified the convention of your domain, first name dot last name at kaseya.com, for example. And large numbers of those users on a list or identified from a single dark web source could be indicative of an impending credential stuffing attack. A good time, again, to rotate those passwords and make sure that MFA has been enforced. And IBM found that there are real quantifiable benefits to using these tools and to implementing some of them. They're not all things that you'll achieve with spanning, but employee training reduces the overall impact of a breach by about 5% compared with AI or machine learning driven insights for anomaly detection. For that dark web monitoring, where you may use a combination of human and artificial intelligence to analyze and validate these sources, can help organizations respond quicker and respond before large-scale damage has been done and the organization has been significantly impacted. Ultimately, Kelly, it comes down to recovery, doesn't it?
Yes. I always say the first dollar spent in any security strategy is on the back end with backup and recovery. And you can recover with confidence with spanning across your SaaS applications. And with it as long or as well, with recovery, a layered defense with spanning as well as other Kaseya solutions is a great approach. You mentioned that phishing defense and dark web monitoring. We have solutions that integrate directly into spanning backups. We also offer multi-factor spam. We integrate with your RMM, and we always use 2FA. We also have robust password management with solutions like IT Glue, and then the backup and recovery piece, again, with spanning. Anything you wanted to add here, Adam?
Oh, I think you summed it up, perfectly there. And ultimately, our goal at Kaseya with our vision and IT Complete is to develop different tools that are purposefully workflow integrated to help IT be more efficient, accomplish more with less. We know that it's a challenge out there for a lot of folks in hiring. We're going through it here internally, where we have recs at times that are difficult to fill.
Yep.
Workers are demanding, higher pay with new qualifications. They become certified in the cloud and they want to be, compensated fairly for that. There's a lot of change, but ultimately our tools are designed to work together, to be integrated in purposeful, meaningful ways so that IT can react faster and ultimately spend less time babysitting backups, trying to get things to work between these different tools, and ensure that you have overall, that resilience and that confidence for your organization.
Great.
So excellent. And I think Nick had posted into the chat. We're going to move, I believe, into Q&A. So Nick, take us away.
We are indeed. Adam, Kelly, thank you so much. I've been scribbling a million things down here, one of which was, I'm smarter than this, I'm not. But let's not go into that as a question. Some amazing stats on there as well. And I'm, 23andMe, blaming it on the users and that feature rollout as well. And it's like, we can sit and just go through this on a panel. But on that note, we do have a panel to get onto in a second. And a quick one to our audience. I know we have got our panel that we're going to introduce in just a few minutes. If you do have any questions for Adam, for Kelly, from our keynote, as well as our panel, of which Kelly will be joining us in just a few minutes, please do feel free to raise a virtual hand. Oh, we do have a question popping up here. Luis Eric, if we can bring you up on screen, we'll give you a couple of seconds while Adam here in the studio reaches out. While we are doing that, Adam and Kelly, I'm going to come over to you for a really quick question. One thing I did jot down actually that stuck out, the slide around understanding your users better. How can you understand your users better in general terms, I suppose, as a quick 101, but more importantly, does that start to change with the acceleration of AI? Can we start getting deeper insights? Will companies start using AI in different ways to actually help understand their users to be able to help inform better strategies?
Ooh, that is a
I think
question,
I wasn't sure, Kelly, if you were going to go in and absolutely, Nick, one of the interesting things, and I'm not sure if it made it into this presentation, but Kelly and I were on a webinar the other day, and it was a little bit more of the nefarious use case as far as AI goes, but AI models that are understanding user behavior, what they're clicking on, what they search for, how to pattern match and get in there. I think there are applications that we could use for good as well. And one of the things that our phishing defense tools use is they do use artificial intelligence to establish what's called trusted relationships. So this is just one aspect of our technology where we're looking to understand what are the speech patterns. Who do they typically communicate with during their day-to-day? Even things like the impossible logon request. This user was just pinging from New York. How on earth are they pinging from California an hour later? Unless there was a bullet train from coast to coast here in the US that I haven't heard of. Just not feasible to do that. So we're starting to leverage, or we have been leveraging artificial intelligence in some of our solutions. And I think that there is the opportunity, like you said, to understand that behavior so that we can spot nefarious actors that are trying to inject themselves into those streams. We started to see it with, say, the Zoom bombers. They'd get into your calendar. They'd see you have a meeting coming up. We're running late all the time. Things are stacking back to back. We have an executive here. I won't name him, but if you're on this executive's time, you can be up to 7 minutes late because he's just so busy and he's always being dragged from thing to thing. You may not open up the calendar. You see that notification pop up into your inbox. You click right on it. How can we get some of that stuff out of our inboxes, but also, understanding what's that typical behavior of the user so that when something anomalous does occur, we can stop that from even getting through into the inbox itself. And that's where some of our tools come into play to help catch that. And as they learn and they get smarter, they're more effective over time at catching things. That's, I think, and I know I'm going on a little bit of a tangent here, but that I think is one of the challenges that we're facing with AI right now. The data and the nature of data in the cybersecurity landscape traditionally is very siloed and very protected. On the other hand, adversaries have the whole litany of the public internet, dark web, deep web, all sorts of data to be able to source from. Where I'm really excited about and where I would like to see where things go is collaboration between these companies to share and to help these models accelerate faster. Microsoft, CrowdStrike, Palo Alto are some of the organizations in the security space that have made heavy investments in AI. but can we start to share this data, and how do we do so still in a secure way so that we can improve the efficacies of these models? I don't have an answer for you today. I'd be curious what our panelists think in a little bit, but it is an opportunity that I see for us in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you, Adam. Yes, a little bit less Zoom bombing for everybody, I think would be well received for sure. Well,
Yes.
on that note, we are going to bring up a quick audience question, and then we're going to wave you off very politely, Adam, as we head into our panel. But before we do, I believe we have Luis Eric, who is going to be joining us. If you give us a quick second. Luis, hello. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me at all, Luis?
Yes.
Yes,
I'm getting
okay.
it.
Hello. I
Sure.
will hand the floor to you. Your question to Adam and Kelly.
Yeah, that's many vendors are saying like they're able to catch all the SaaS information as a cloud or SharePoint, all those information. But do you have any stats about if anything happens, you lose all your Exchange server, you have to bring back like 1,000 email mailbox. How long it will take you for bring those information back?
That's a great question. That there's a couple of things that come into play when it comes to recovery. Let's say 1,000 messages in your mailbox or files in your OneDrive. It depends on the file type, how much data is in that file, as well as the solution that you are using and limits on API calls with Microsoft, let's say. Microsoft does limit the number of API calls you have in a day to do a recovery. So that's a great question. I unfortunately don't have a solid answer for you. I guess, what industry are you in, Lewis?
I'm in the mining industry.
Okay. Yeah, it depends on the file type, just how much data is within there. We've seen on the spanning side, depending on the type of data and the types of files, anywhere from, let's say, 1,000 messages in your mailbox, anywhere from a couple of hours to a day or two, depending on what is in the contents of those messages.
Okay. You don't have any benchmark at this point.
I don't
Because
off the top of my head.
I did
Yeah.
and I took the worst case, like a few gigs, like a mailbox with like a different kind of size, like a size of a large email with like a big volume email, but very small email or so. And some tests went through 2 or 3 days. Then that's one good thing to say. Oh, I'm able to back up all your system, guys. No trouble. If anything happened, I can bring it up, but it can take 3 weeks to bring all your Exchange server up and running.
Yep. And that's pretty standard. I would say that is a problem that many vendors have in the backup and recovery sector. No, I don't know if you want to add anything, Adam, to that, but I know no solutions are perfect, and that speed of recovery is just dependent on the type of data and how much is in each file or each message.
You don't have any specific agreement with Microsoft or any like AWS to speed up the to increase the bandwidth just because it's a major fault and it's a recovery process? Because I do understand the normal one, they lock you on API and they throttle your bandwidth. But when you have to recovery, instead to have to take the decisions who has to pass first and how much data you want to allow to go up, it will be nice if any agreement was done, like this kind of trigger as emergency, and we open the pipe and send more information through it.
In a situation like that, it is an interesting use case. It's something I think, Kelly, we should ask some of
our engineers
probably touch base with product management to see if there are scenarios. Off the top of my head, I don't know if there are agreements or permissions like that in place, but it's certainly something that we could look into and get you more accurate information on.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. And we can make sure that post showcase, Luis, we can connect everybody up and we can go and do a deeper dive spanning sides to go and get some of those all important insights for you. Thank you very much for your question, Luis, and for coming up. And to the rest of our audience, we are going to be coming to our panel audience Q&A in around about 15-20 minutes or so. But for now, Luis, we're going to wave you off. And indeed, Adam, we're going to say thank you and wave yourself off as well, sir. Thank you very much for the keynote, and we'll speak with you very soon. Kelly, you are going to be staying on with me as we introduce our panel. So on that note, ladies and gentlemen, as we have already heard from our keynotes, what I'd like to do is introduce today's discussion for our panel. AI, a very real threat or a very rewarding opportunity? Over the next 20 minutes, we will be taking a deeper dive into the perspectives of 3 IT security leaders, and I've been hearing and watching some of them in the background. There is a lot of conversation, and I'm excited to bring them up here as they explore their expertise and get real on the risks of tomorrow's threats today. And what a panel we have joining us. We have Jeff Moore, CISO over at Staples. We have Diageo Edie, Cybersecurity Manager at Casey's. We have Norman Levine, Senior Manager for Cyber Risk Management over at Omnicom. And rejoining us, you already know her as Kelly Cronin, Product Marketing Cloud Backup at Spanning, because that's exactly who she still is. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our panel today. How are we all doing? Norman, Jeff, can you hear me loud and clear, sir? Norman, can you hear me, sir?
Absolutely. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Jeff, Diego, thank you very much for joining us. And obviously, Kelly, thank you very much for sticking around as we jump straight in to our panel. And so, Jeff, I'm going to come down to you, sir, purely because you're bottom left of my screen, not picking on you for any other reason than that. As we kind of open up just a quick fire round to get us going, Staples size, what is coming off the horizon for you when, you know, going from the keynote we've had with Kelly and Adam already around this AI piece, everything you've heard, what is coming off that horizon? What's front of mind for you today over at Staples?
Same thing that's always been. It doesn't change much for us, right? It's all about making sure that we do the basics right and look forward, right? You have to look forward. If you keep looking, the only time you should be looking back is at breaches and incidents to refactor your playbooks and move that, right? You should try and look forward and see where you're going and understand the business. That's the key thing that I'm doing every day.
Love that. Keep it simple. And already that kind of jumps into a question I've just jotted down that I'm going to come back to you for. Norman, same question to you. I mean, keep it simple. I think that is absolutely critical. You know, don't get blinded by the proverbial shining lights and magpieing of things. However, as we move into this future of AI, easier said than done, right? Omnicom side, what's coming off that horizon for you? What is a target for you at the moment? What are you keen to be controlling?
So we're using it. As you can imagine, Omnicom is made up of 1,500 advertising agencies in 50 countries. And so we are using AI, but we have to vet all of our vendors. So when we're looking at AI, we want to know, with the vendors that are joining us for whatever reason, are they using AI? How are they using it? Is it going to be generative AI? Is it going to be used for machine learning? And that's really key for us, because if a vendor is using AI, we have to really do a deep dive into them, how they're using it, why they're using it, because there's just too much at risk when you look at our company.
Mm-hmm. Lovely stuff. Thank you, Norman. And Diego, down to you, same question. Feel free to open up on points from Jeff and Norman as well there.
Sure. I like Jeff's answer as well. Like, keep it simple. But for us, what I try to focus every day is in data security and making sure that our data is secure, and for me, it boils down in three answers. So where's our data is, who is accessing, and what's happening with the data. So if I have understanding of these three things, I think I'm in a good place. But for AI, one of the biggest concerns for me is not, so one of the concerns for AI for me is how our users or employees or team members that we call it are using it. So in our case, we try to perform like an education and let them know, hey, anything that you put out there, like you ask to ChatGPT or Bard or any of the other AI tools, like to create a slide or create a text, that's gone. Everything that you put, if you put company confidential information, it's gone. So that's, for me, is the biggest thing in my data security, making sure that my employees are not giving our confidential information away.
Yeah, absolutely critical, right? And I suppose to expand on that, and I know we're going to probably open up on bits and pieces around this quite quickly around the education piece, Diego, but how do you govern that? I mean, you're never going to be able to govern that 100% at an absolute level, of course. But how does that governance in education piece work over at Casey's?
So we, the first thing we did, honestly, was a kind of block generative AI access to a couple of tools, and the most used tools, we blocked them. But before that, we sent out a communication. We went to team meet, and this is different because at Cases we are, at least the corporate side, it's a smaller, so it's easy for us to do the one-on-one with teams and other business units. So telling them, hey, please don't use, these are the risks. And what we're doing on our innovation center is trying to test other tools that we can implement inside where our data is contained. So even if you ask a question to a ChatGPT like, it's contained within our environment.
Got it. Lovely stuff. Kelly, up to yourself. Similar question, actually, from the other side of the proverbial coin. What's coming off that horizon over at Spanning side? You know, what are you looking out for?
In regards to AI, we drink our own champagne here at Spanning, and Kaseya, I like to say, some might say dog food. I prefer champagne over dog food. We utilize AI with our email security software, our anti-phishing software, to better understand our behavior with our employees when clicking on emails and who they are interacting with day to day via email. Just so they are more easily aware or readily aware, they'll get a banner at the top of their message. Is this a trusted email recipient or email sender? And you can report it. And as soon as you report it, it will be eliminated from your mailbox and anyone else that might have received the same message. And then will be quarantined for our IT team to further investigate in a safe space before, let's say it wasn't an attack by any means, but then they can bring it back to everyone's mailbox moving forward. So I think that is one benefit for AI. At Spanning and at Kaseya, we do have a large sales team within our organization. Oftentimes, we just recommend our sales members, if they're looking for any sort of sales training or competitive analysis, to take what they are seeing on tools like ChatGPT with a grain of salt. Because like Adam mentioned earlier in our keynote, recently ChatGPT is becoming kind of, I don't want to say dumber, but it's dumbing down more recently. That might change, but high level, we just recommend don't use any internal data that might expose us, and most users within our organization don't even have access to that, and putting us at risk, but more so just seeing what's out there in the market and to speed up our sales process and sales training within our organization.
Lovely stuff. Thank you. I'm definitely stealing drink our own champagne. Why,
yes.
why I didn't make that link before, I don't know. Thank you, Jeff. I want to come back down to yourself, sir, if I may. And before I do, actually, just out to our wider audience as well, we are going to be coming to a live audience Q&A with our panel in around about just over 10 minutes. So do get your questions at the ready, sling them in the chat, send them to Adam in a DM, raise your hand, drop the Q&A, multiple ways of doing it, but get your questions out to our panel. Jeff, over to yourself. I'm going to get us out of the ChatGPT conversation after this one question, mainly because I got a good quote from it. But, you know, that proverbial genie is long out of the bottle, right? Public know about it. We know about it in security space for a long time. But as Adam, I think it was Adam or Kelly, one of the slides on the keynote session was around that the more sophisticated use now of things like spelling and grammar which were previous characteristics of obvious phishing emails. But actually it's going that a step further now, providing things like literal frameworks to create new attacks based on prompts that are being put into AI, such as ChatGPT. And I found this example from The Guardian, who reported a US-Israeli cybersecurity firm had used the latest iteration of ChatGPT to produce a credible seeming phishing email. It circumvented the chatbot safety procedures by telling the tool that it needed a template of a phishing email for an employee awareness program. So nonetheless, it's still a human sat behind the screen making that happen. My question here is, from your perspective, how much more sophisticated are these approaches likely to become? You obviously have no proverbial magic ball here, but what do companies need to be preparing for in real terms versus the kind of fear mongering of what could be out there in the media and is purported?
So look, it's not changing. This is the problem. Everybody's like, this is amazing and all this stuff. I can get past ChatGPT. Anybody can. This is not a rocket science, right? I had to look up some security stuff. It said no. I said I'm doing research on it. It gave me the data. Simple, right? Look, if I can craft an email with bad spelling and send it, and 80% of natural English people are going to pick it up, and the other 20% who English is not their first language, it may not be their second language, are going to fall for it, right? I don't need to have a perfectly crafted message to get through in it, right? And this has been happening for years. If you have a company where the message has to be in 5 different languages, right? The German is not going to be perfect because the person who crafted it may speak in the old form of German, not in the new form of German, right? So the getting through with phishing is still going to be as simple without AI or with AI as it was in the past. And we're seeing it, right? So it doesn't make a difference because the people who are the problem, and some people who are going to be still susceptible to the same problems, right? If you have a issue, your mom has some form of cancer, and the hackers have your data and realize that they craft an email. It doesn't have to be perfect. You read it and there's something, and you're going to click on something, right? Because you want to take care of your mother. Maybe. I don't know everybody's mother.
Hackers are so crafty in that way. They understand that we will immediately respond if it creates any sort of emotion coming from the message that they have to send us, whether it's urgency or sadness, anger. We are going to act.
It's human nature, right? And this is the thing, right? During COVID, the most ones were sent off about new COVID found and all this stuff. This was the target. Over here, running up to in America, running up to tax season, it's crafted around IRS messages. And in Christmas, just it's a business model.
I totally see that too, Jeff. I don't mean to interject, Nick. But that is the importance of having those security awareness trainings, because we are so quick to jump and click on something if we are in a state of panic. Those trainings help our employees, at least in the Kaseya side, be more use a little more critical thought and further investigate. Okay, yes, this is the message. This is what they're asking of me. Where can I search? Does the email address look legitimate? The link that is here, are there any misspellings in, like, we recently had an email security awareness training go out and they misspelled Salesforce, and we use Salesforce as our CRM software. So just taking the time to look at those little errors on that side, whether it was used by AI or ChatGPT or not. But that's where that importance of having a security awareness training of any kind is invaluable at any company.
Well, awareness is in general invaluable, whether it's security, it's health awareness, it's awareness about different kinds of things. You should always be trying to understand more than what you have in front of you.
Of course.
Yeah, lovely stuff. Thank you very much for that, Jeff. Norman, going to come up to yourself, so feel free to open up on anything you just heard there. We to Jeff's point, and indeed to Kelly's as well. over from the Omnicom perspective as well, with your network across, as you said, 50 different agencies, global spanning, how does that piece work itself out in terms of giving the right levels of awareness and insight to that training, but also staying abreast of the direction that you want to be taking next?
It's a double-edged sword, if you will. First of all, it's education, 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 and we frequently go out at least once a quarter, sending out emails, phishing emails to see if our employees catch them. And that's just absolutely critical today. You have to do it. The problem I think that you run into, regretfully, is you can't stop stupid. And not every employee outside of security understands the importance of why we have to be so circumspect in how we manage our emails, how we manage everything that we do today. Even telephone calls, if you're now using IP phones, you have to be very circumspect. And being that we're all about creative, right? Because we're 1,500 agencies in 50 countries. So when you think about it, creative folks want to do one thing. They want to get out there creative. They want to write their commercials, their print, they're doing whatever. Because of that, though, we have challenges to ensure that everything is locked down. When you think about it, I mean, the data, the intellectual property that we produce has to be managed very carefully and very strictly. Because if it isn't, and we get hacked, it's not only being hacked, it's a matter of our clients find out. That's how you lose clients, right? So we're very circumspect in that, and to Kelly's point and to Jeff's point earlier, the fact is when you have data and you're using ChatGPT, guess what? They have it forever. So you really have to be careful how you utilize those tools. And it's also clicking on links. I mean, just from a personal perspective, I've probably been getting, prior to yesterday's election here in the States, I was getting at least 10 chats per day with links. And the problem is that anybody, that's on the bad side of things, that's a hacker, could easily create one of these emails, click on it, and they got you. So, you have to really be circumspect in your approaches.
Indeed. Thank you, Norman. Apologies there. I said 50 agencies. I meant 50 countries.
No worries.
So I think actually, and on that piece, I'm keen to move us on. So Diego, I'm going to come down to you on there. I mean, we've spoken a lot about threats, attacks, security vulnerabilities. I'd like to introduce another proverbial trinity here: compliance, regulations, and insurance, right? So it's that wild west for the world's cyber criminals out there. And yet for IT leaders, security leaders in their organizations, it's quite the opposite. Stringent compliance standards across the board, having for all the right reasons, in inverted commas, to keep abreast of all those regulations. My question, putting that into context or providing that context, how do you at Casey's provide or define or even walk that balance between pushing your own boundaries of cybersecurity and not falling foul of regulatory and compliance boundaries that are in place there?
So for us, what we try to do, at least in our security program, is protect the data of our guests, because we have our rewards, and protect the data of our team members. And we try to do the best we can with the best tools that we have at our disposal. And the idea is, of course, not just meeting those regulatory or compliance thresholds, but surpass them. So, and especially in and I cannot even think about like 50 different countries, but in our case, we are a Midwest company. So we have 2,500 stores in 17 states. And if you know a little bit about the US, I'm not sure where our audience is, but in the US, each state has different laws. If the different privacy and compliance regulatory requirements, so it's very different. So my IR plan is like half of it is like 17 different laws, privacy laws per states. So which is it's a little bit crazy if you think about Europe, that they have one GDPR covers everyone. So what we thought here, we'll get one of them and just we will comply to the highest of them. So in our case, even if we are not in California, we try to comply with California privacy laws. So that way we know that the low bar, we are always covered with everyone else.
So you're always at that highest common denominator possible, regardless of kind of state boundaries.
And that's the best way to work in any global company or company that spans across, because you can't work to lowest common denominator, because all the 10 above you are going to give you a problem. So you start at the top and then you cover all the things below, you know.
A lot of nodding heads on that one. One of them is Kelly. So Kelly, I'm going to come up to you as well there. You know, this piece around you know, getting that balance right. I mean, there's a part B of that question really, which is, how do you feel regulatory and compliance bodies should be working with organizations in perhaps different ways? What's your take on that? Do you think it's just much of the same and things needs to kind of continue to escalate? Or do you think there needs to be a shift in that dynamic between organizations and regulatory and compliance bodies?
I think it's always best to have open, honest conversations between parties, no matter who those parties are. So I think if there's anything, it's just a collaboration between those governing bodies and the organizations that are working with them. Obviously, we are always wanting to continue to improve our security posturing at organizations. So I think it's beneficial for both groups to have an understanding of what's happening with, I hate to go back to AI, but how that is changing our cybersecurity and threat landscape, and sharing that knowledge that organizations have, whether that's from organization to organization, and working with those larger governing bodies, or those governing bodies being a little more transparent with organizations and what we need to do to better meet certain criteria that they're looking for. Yep.
Jeff, down to yourself, sir. Anything to add on that side, first of all?
There's a lot to unpack there, to be honest with you, right? It could be a whole call in itself. You know, in general, I'm 100% in agreement with what Kelly's saying. I think as you go further and further afield, it gets more convoluted, right? Governing bodies don't care what we say and are not interested. PCI Council never listened to us. The SEC didn't listen to the CISOs either. It doesn't make a difference. These are dictations of what you need to do to protect themselves, actually not to protect the people. Or the PCI Council was never about protecting the users, or about protecting the credit card companies, right? So for us, we have to do the best we can with the limited resources, limited funding, and just trying to be there to help when it goes wrong.
On that note, and I'm keen for us to, as we kind of jump into our last, 5-10 minutes or so, to put a bit of a flip on this and get an end on positive sentiment, if we can. And Jeff, I'm going to carry on with you, so and then I'm going to do a quick lap round. Opportunities. When you look on the kind of, on that positive opportunities staple side, what do you see as some of those opportunities with, it doesn't need to be just AI, but with emerging tech, with the way things are going, with how things are evolving at proverbial breakneck speed? What do you see as a potential cybersecurity opportunity that's exciting you over the next 12, 18 months?
I'll be brutally honest. I don't see there's a lot of innovation coming. There is no innovation in cybersecurity, by the way, for the last 20 years, right? It's all evolution, right? And evolution is a good thing. Right. And that's the one thing that actually does keep me going, is because hopefully working with a lot of the startups and with a lot of the innovative people who are thinking differently, I feel that they are products, tools, sometimes people. Let's be honest. It should never be products first or tools first. It's people, process, and technology. In most cases, I can get rid of technology, find a process and a person to do it manually, which is a lot harder. But that whole 3 points are really important to move things forward, and that's the thing that keeps me actually happy every day, trying to make things go forward, is having this moving forward in a good way, right? Think tools are going to come and go, but and threats have not changed, to be honest, right? So that's the good thing, right? It's when those threats change that we have no clue what it is that becomes the problem.
Yeah.
So I'm happy the way we're going. I'm happy, like, to be honest, today I had such a phenomenal conversation with Norman and Diego. I feel enriched already today just by having this whole event and being here. So for me, that is the greatest thing we can get: knowledge and move forward.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, soundbite, and again, I can attest to that. And there was a lot of backstage conversation going on, which is always great.
There was
in these kind of events, which is fantastic. Diego, I'm going to come over to you, sir. Same question, and feel free to, as always, open up on anything you've had. I know we do have an audience question en route from Luis Eric to our audience. Any other questions you do have for our panel, please do raise them up as we get into our closing minutes here. Diego, same question to you. Positive future opportunities, sir.
Yeah, so I'm on the same boat as Jeff. I believe tools are the same, or they're evolving. There are new tools, but they are going to solve the same problems. But the most important aspect that I'm really excited for the future are the people. Last week, I had the opportunity to be Iowa State University to do like mock interviews the whole day on a Friday, and I spoke with 10 master's candidates. And I'll tell you, these people that never had a work experience, the knowledge that they had about security, about business, about everything was light years ahead what I had when I started my career. So I believe we are in a really good position in the next few years with these people entering the workforce that we were like 10, 20 years, so 30 years ago. And I'm really excited. And these are people that are interviewing for like internships. It's not like a full-time job yet. They're just trying to learn and get their hands on. And when I started my career, internships were, hey, it's a coffee, take notes. Today they're literally doing work and delivering products. And this is really exciting for me.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So two on the people number. Norman, up to yourself. Is it a third on the people vote?
Yeah, it is actually. And I think Jeff and Diego got it right. It really is people, process, and technology. Technology will take care of itself through the people. I am finding a better level of commitment within the technology arena. I can't speak outside of that because I don't see the same levels of commitment and curiosity. But I think once you're into technology, you really you become curious. You need to learn to stay ahead of the curve. So I think that's really important. I'm going to bring something up, and maybe it'll be for the future. But when I was talking to Jeff and Diego earlier, that we have to keep our eyes on tangentially, and that's quantum computing, because it is going to happen. It's going to be here. And that's going to really change a lot of things in how we do stuff. And it's going to be a heyday when it comes to our hackers for nation states as well, because that's something I'm sure that they're salivating, waiting. And now you combine quantum computing with artificial intelligence, what you've got yourself is similar to a nuclear bomb, right? When you think about it, because now you've got two elements that can work together exceptionally quickly. So we'll have to see where that goes.
Yeah, indeed. Have to that unfortunate, to say the least, hand in glove moment, as you say, Norman, is something we don't ever want to reach, but is moving towards a possibility at points in some dimension. So thank you very much for that, Norman. Kelly, over to yourself. Are we going full house on people?
We are. I really appreciate what Jeff had said about how these threats are not really anything new, but they are evolving over time. And when it comes to people, I think we have the greatest opportunity to work together, organizations working together, maybe not necessarily sharing our code or our craft with one another. But because these threats continue to evolve, I think having great conversations. Like I wish though I loved presenting today with Adam earlier, I would have loved to have just been a fly on the wall to hear what Norman and Jeff and Diego were chatting about, and sharing those ideas and
Ellie,
how we can improve.
We solved world peace. It was
Oh, I
simple.
love
We
that.
did, bro.
We did, yes.
That's right up my alley.
Really.
Right.
That's my cup of tea. But having those conversations with like minds, and sharing those ideas to better solve those issues with those threats that continue to evolve, and how we can continue to support each other as people and as organizations to be secure and successful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Agreed.
lovely. Indeed, a lot of, world peace was definitely solved, but unfortunately no one wrote it down, so we start from scratch again. Well, thank you very much, Kelly. We're going to come to our audience question, which again is actually with Luis Eric, so we're going to see if we can bring Luis up as we wrap up our panel here. Give us a couple of seconds. If we can't, he has sent us the question as well, so we'll give him a quick second to see if we can get Luis up with our panel. Luis, hello again, sir. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Great.
Floor is yours, Luis.
My question is regarding about like security purpose is if we go back like 10 years ago, our budget on security was very low, and it's kind of exploding every years. And every years we said like, oh, we should reach the maximum of security, and there's always another layers we want to improve ourselves. Then I just want to have an idea about ballpark. What is your ratio between hours and dollars in your budgets allowed just for security purpose?
Could you repeat that second bit again there, Luis? I think you cut out. What's your ratio between
the ratio about your budget of IT? Did they allow just for security side? Like you have like 5 people, like 2 people, you have about 20 system or so. Do you have any ballpark you are putting in place?
I think if I've heard that correctly, and perhaps Norman, if we come up to yourself first, what is the percentage of budget in terms of hours versus dollars on I suppose on a broader scale regarding security? Is that the gist of it, Luis?
Yeah.
Yeah, so fair enough. Great question. Unfortunately, those are one of those confidential things that I can't really talk about in terms of percentages. I just can't go there. I can tell you though that our teams are highly dedicated. Typically, a work week for us is a minimum of 50 hours to get things done, and that's on a good week. So we really, all of us have to put in the time and the effort to get stuff done. Percentage-wise, like I said, I just can't address it. It's something that's they don't want us talking about.
Completely
I hope you can
understand.
I also
that.
think, Norman, I think the percentage varies for every company and what in the industry they're in, right? There's no such thing as that perfect silver bullet that's going to give you the perfect security, the perfect budget. Gardner talks about it. Boston Computer, there is nothing, right? And the most best security team is useless if the company can't sell anything because your company's going to close down. And the best sales team is useless if security fails and they can't sell. So it's a combination across it. But it's a good question. I wish there was an answer.
True. Very good question indeed. So, Diego, I'm going to come to you, sir. I mean, within the realms of what you can say, anything to add there?
Yeah, so what I've seen in the industry, I'm not saying about cases, but cannot say as well as the same boat, but I was seeing, and again, I don't think it translates really well in the world, because I believe Equifax had 300 people when they got breached in their security team.
Yep.
My security team is definitely way smaller than that, and I work with companies that are way bigger than that. So it's I think that the secret is understanding your environment, understanding your crown jewels, and understanding the threat landscape that your company is within, and just protecting those assets, because you cannot protect yourself, your company from everything. That's impossible. Like even if my security team, let's say we're 100 people protecting 24/7, like I have probably every script kiddie with 14 years old just trying to DDoS my company or knocking every port that I have to see it's open. So it's just it's an impossible task. Like I have to be right 100% times. They have to be right just one time, and doesn't matter if it's 1,000 tentatives or just one tentative. I have to be 100% every time. But yeah, I think I don't see a correlation because I've seen both ways, like T-Mobile when it got breached, or Okta when it got breached. Can you imagine a company that should have more security than Okta? They got breached several times. So I think it's my focus on my team is understanding our threat landscape and shoring up those walls. And again, I think in my view as a security practitioner, I know that I cannot protect everything. So my focus is understanding really well my environment to understand, hey, something is different here. Something doesn't smell right. Something's fishy. I'm going to start digging up in my environment.
Thank you, Diego. And finally, Kelly, to close up, I'm going to come up to you.
Sure. I appreciate your very honest and pointed question, Luis, about budget and percentage of spend on security and cybersecurity. Like the others, I can't say exactly what Kaseya. I don't have that information, nor would I think our CFO would share that information with me. But I think it goes down to, yes, finding where your weaknesses are within your organization. Maybe that means you invest in any sort of penetration testing to see where your vulnerabilities may be within your organization, and then investing in those quick wins first. And I think it also depends on the types of data that is available to people. Is it personal information of your customers or your employees that are at risk, or is it confidential information about a product that you sell that people could then share with others, and investing in that way? Always a layered approach is going to be best, and as many free or low cost ways to get those easy wins is going to be your best dollar spent. And from there, like using the Essential 8 in Australia, that's a great way to see what level of security do you want to reach, and where does your budget fit in line with those 8 levels of security. That's honestly what I would have to say from my side. And also too, if you're looking to increase your budget and in the security sector, finding ways to influence the people who make those financial decisions within your organization, and finding ways to connect the dots before an incident happens to hopefully get more funding on the security side of your business.
Lovely stuff. Kelly, thank you very much. Luis, thank you very much for both of your questions there. So I really appreciate the time. And on that note, we are at time. So I'm going to wave off Luis, and I'm going to say to Norman, Diego, Jeff, and Kelly, thank you very much for all of your time today. Really appreciate that. Genuinely, it has been a cracking session and a lot to take away from it, let alone the notes on world peace that we will be sharing around that Jeff said he's going to send. But brilliant.
Please
thank
send
you
to me as well.
Thank you, everybody. It was awesome.
To everyone for your time. Thank you very much. So that's it. We are at time. To our panel and our audience, thank you very much for joining us today. Our team here at Synergy will be in touch with you all in the coming days to get feedback, provide any further information, including slides and anything else you would like, and of course to connect you up with any and all of the conversations that you would like to continue past today. For now, from me and the team here in studio, have a great rest of your day and take care. Goodbye.